Never could scientists have predicted that polar science would be so popular that the leader of the free world wants in. Except it's not really in the way that we would have hoped. Now Venezuela has successfully been conquered, Greenland is firmly set in the crosshairs for the US government. We all know that the tiny-handed orange condom is a megalomaniac tyrant, and it's clear from his recent heavy-handed attempts at diplomacy that he's on the hunt for oil. But aside from the obvious, what else are he and his team after? In this video, I'm going to try and unravel it a bit. If you're new around here, I'm Ella, a climate scientist with a penchant for the poles, and I've been to quite a few polar places in my career, but Greenland is still on my bucket list, although I'm starting to think that now really might not be the time to visit. Greenland is a huge island in the Arctic North Atlantic, 4/5 of which are covered in ice. It's home to 57,000 people, making it the least densely populated country in the world. And while it's officially a Danish territory thanks to the same brand of colonialism that makes the Commonwealth British, Greenland belongs to Greenlanders. Most people in Greenland are of Inuit heritage and have a strong connection to their environment, which means that they really don't want someone like Donald Trump trying to get his grubby little mitts on their home. And to be fair, plenty of them have been telling Trump to F off. But it isn't just Greenlanders who should be concerned about the giant orange baby's latest power play. We should all be scared of the USA trying to illegally annex Greenland for a bunch of reasons. The first of those reasons is that Greenland is absolutely essential for climate protection, which means that it matters for every life on Earth, even American ones, whether they believe it or not. Despite its name, Greenland is covered in snow and ice, making it not green, but mostly white. Well, in fact, I can actually kind of see why Trump's cabinet is so enamored, because they both love green and hate anything or anyone that is white. Greenland's bright, white, reflective surface makes it extremely reflective, acting like a gigantic ice mirror, deporting the sun's energy back to space. That makes the planet cooler by influencing its energy balance, creating the planet we know and love today. Although our current rate of climate heating is threatening to make the Arctic green again, not exactly something we should look forward to. A warming Arctic brings long-term risks that long-time viewers of this channel will already be familiar with. Higher temperatures in Greenland means more melting ice, and when ice on land melts into the ocean, that raises sea levels. Greenland's ice sheet contains enough ice to raise oceans worldwide by 7 meters. That's the height of a 2-story house. Scientists also know that there's an irreversible tipping point in the Greenland ice sheet, which may actually even have already been crossed. If that's true, it's only a matter of time before we see the runaway loss of Greenland's ice. All that melt entering the Atlantic Ocean is bad enough from a sea level rise perspective, but there's another reason to be worried about it. And that reason is the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, or AMOC. The AMOC is an ocean current that acts like a conveyor belt. It moves 17 million cubic meters of water, which is enough to fill 6,800 Olympic swimming pools every single second. And it carries with it enough heat to power the entire world's energy demands 100 times over. The Gulf Stream is also one that you may have heard of. It's an important part of the AMOC, and it transports warm water near the surface of the ocean from the South Atlantic towards the Arctic, powered mostly by the wind. It's the reason that the climate of Western Europe, and countries particularly like Britain and Ireland, are so mild given their latitude compared to their counterparts across the pond. Greenland melt impacts the AMOC because fresh meltwater is much less dense than saltwater, and here's why. As saltwater travelling on the AMOC conveyor heads north on its outward leg from the equator, it cools. As you know, cold things are heavier than warm things, so the colder, saltier water starts to sink to the bottom of the ocean, forming the return leg of the AMOC loop. Or at least, that's what has happened for the last 6,000 or 7,000 years. Now though, the influx of fresh water driven by climate heating and the accelerated rates of melt it's driving in Greenland are making the saltwater less salty and weakening the salinity-driven engine of the conveyor belt. That's bad news because ocean currents are a vital component of our climate system and impact our weather a lot. A weaker and less stable AMOC could impact the weather of the whole planet, and those of us in Western Europe should be especially concerned. Changes in this fundamental ocean current could change rain and snowfall patterns, impact the frequency and pathways of storms, and increase the number and intensity of extreme events. Locally, shifts in the AMOC could also drive sea level rise because warmer water is less dense and it takes up more space as a result, meaning that areas with warmer ocean water would have higher sea levels. In fact, this is exactly what was observed in New York State in 2009 and 10, after a short-term drop in the strength of the AMOC caused sea levels to rise by 13 centimeters. Feedbacks within the climate could also spread the impacts of an AMOC weakening further afield, impacting weather patterns in the southern hemisphere and closer to the equator. With its pivotal role in the Earth's climate, it's no wonder that Greenland is also an important centre of international scientific collaboration. It's one of the very few places on Earth where ice cores documenting the very long-term relationship between greenhouse gases and temperature rise can be drilled. Collecting those requires super thick ice, as well as huge amounts of expertise, funding, and teamwork. That's why drilling ice cores is such an international effort. Scientific collaboration is unrivaled at the poles, both north and south, with nations sharing information, environmental data, personnel, and resources. In my time at one of the British Antarctic bases, I met researchers and staff from a huge number of different countries who were either passing through en route to their own stations or contributing to research led by the Brits. The same can be said of almost any polar outpost. Huge amounts of science goes on in Greenland to understand how its climate is changing and, crucially, how best to act in order to protect it. Research efforts in Greenland are currently managed by the Danish government, who approve permits to conduct scientific experiments and monitoring programs. They have an interest to make sure that Greenland is protected during any research and that it is carried out in the public interest. But there's no overarching Arctic-wide oversight that has a say in science in Greenland. Because one fundamental difference between North and South is that Antarctica is protected by international treaty, but Greenland is not. So if the USA seizes control illegally and unilaterally, it's not improbable, perhaps to borrow a phrase from the IPCC, very likely, that all of these efforts would grind to a halt, to the detriment of the entire planet. What evidence do I have for this, you may ask? Well, beyond recent current events, there are a few big orange flags that point us there. For one thing, there's Trump himself. He consistently spouts misinformation, including about climate change.
It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world.
And he famously has a vested interest in
Clean, beautiful coal.
To that end, since taking office, Trump and his cronies have systematically withdrawn funding and dismantled federal agencies involved in climate science or action. They've shut down websites from important environmental agencies like the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, and the Environmental Protection Agency. They've also removed mention of the word climate from all federal communications. They have deleted crucial climate information like the National Climate Assessments from federal websites. And they've axed important programs that monitor weather and climate. It's actually only really thanks to non-profits and outraged scientists themselves stepping in to maintain critical data sets that anything climate-related has been saved from their book-burning binge. But despite efforts to minimize it from inside and outside America, these actions have already affected science worldwide, reducing the number of publicly accessible data sets, cutting monitoring capabilities, and fueling online disinformation. Funding for climate research is also under fire from Trump and his gang. Just before Christmas, they tried to push through a budget that would cut funding to NOAA and NASA by more than a quarter, having already made moves to shut down world-leading US climate research institutes like the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. Ross Val, director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, said the facility is one of the largest sources of climate alarmism in the country, which, to my mind, coming from him, is actually a huge compliment. So fair play to my colleagues at NCAR. But jokes aside, climate science in the US is really suffering. Budget cuts, loss of funding, and direct attacks on science are causing leading scientists to leave the country. One such prominent figure, Professor Ben Santer, recently announced that he was leaving the USA to move to the UK to continue working on climate research. Let that sink in. The UK. Seriously. Things are so bad in the USA that people are moving here. Not only that, but the USA has withdrawn from important climate policy agreements, including the Paris Agreement and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which coordinates it. Aside from these two, the administration has also exited from 64 other international bodies, many of them related to climate change. So I think it's pretty abundantly clear that this is a country and a government that does not want to be involved in climate action. So, given their current sympathies and clear agenda, Trump's regime are probably not going to be allowing the world-leading climate science that happens in Greenland to continue once they invade. And I'm pretty sure that Trump wasn't referring to ice cores when he said he wanted to
Drill, baby, drill.
At scary times like these, clear voices that you can trust are super important. And I like to think of myself as one of those when it comes to climate change. All my videos are underpinned by peer-reviewed climate science and my expertise that I've gained over 15 years studying and working in the field. But unlike the autocrats in charge at the top, I don't have the backing of huge corporations or oligarchs, so I rely on the kindness of people like you supporting the work that I do. If you can go the extra mile and support the channel on Patreon, then I will be eternally grateful to you. Subscriptions start pretty cheap at just the price of a coffee every month. If you can't contribute right now, then that's absolutely fine, but sharing, commenting, and liking these videos also really helps. But anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, Trump's boner for destroying the planet to line his own pockets. Greenland contains a lot of rare earth minerals and fossil fuels under the ice, which is why lots of people think he's after claiming the territory as his own. In fact, that's what the former US National Security Advisor said when Greenland was first in their sights a year ago. So, given the US regime's decision to seemingly say the quiet bit out loud, see Venezuela, then why not believe them? For one thing, multinational mining corps, including US ones, have tried for decades to mine in Greenland, and it's not exactly worked. Aside from anything else, it's actually really bloody hard to extract minerals from under all of that ice, and it's cold too. And then once they're out of the ground, you need to transport them, except there are barely any roads in Greenland, and most airports are so small that they only accept tiny prop planes. So no, Trump doesn't want Greenland to drill baby drill. He wants it to screw with Russia and enforce an American New World Order. To use a Trump-appropriate analogy, he's trying to bag himself a sexy trophy wife to show up with when he signs the divorce papers with Putin. A trophy wife who also lets him park his missiles in her backyard. No euphemism intended. As Arctic ice melts away, the region is opening up for exploration, shipping, and military force. Sea ice cover is currently the lowest on record in the latest installment of a decades-long trend at the Northern Pole. So, for a country with hard power aspirations, the Arctic is a clever place to turn its attention. Although it already has a base in Greenland because both the USA and Denmark are part of NATO, seizing total control would undoubtedly give the US free rein to enforce its national interests in Greenland, and probably also tear NATO apart, which actually plays into Russia's hands. So maybe the divorce isn't so settled after all. Ultimately, Trump's eyes are on Greenland, not for the minerals, not for the boots on the ground, but for the battle of hearts and minds. This is about power, with the US and Russia both angling to create a world in their image. It's Cold War Round 2, with both sides battling for ideological supremacy while the world crumbles, burns, and melts in their wake. And we're all caught in the crossfire. We should all be fighting to keep Greenland in the hands of Greenlanders, because if we don't fight for it, it will just end up being another piece of collateral damage in a dick-swinging contest between two autocrats with tiny man syndrome. And Lord knows we know that won't end well. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about the incredible climate science research that's going on in Greenland at the moment, then check out this 5-part series I made with Greenland climatologist Professor Jason Box. And if you want to support the channel, then you can sign up over here on Patreon. I really do appreciate any virtual coins that you can sling my way. Okay, see you next time, providing World War III hasn't started already.